defensively, you talked about just the two kind of heads of the snake for them. What did you feel like you did well as a 5-man unit to try to make those two guys inefficient and therefore their team?
Yeah, the way we guarded them, it was a 5-man defense tonight. Obviously, we got great stuff out of Kaysen and AC and AJ on those as primary matchups, but the team did a really good job of executing for the most part and gave us a good starting point against those particular players. And we gave them some different looks, which was helpful for us as well.
Shea spoke the other night about just being inspired about hearing stories of guys like Rajon Rondo and others who have had very unique stylistic impacts on the game and feeling like he can continue to push the limits of his game by adopting some of those styles. Where do you see that within him in terms of the ability to find inspiration all over the place?
I just think it's broadly a tangible example of his growth mindset. He sees himself as an unfinished product. He sees himself as a work in progress. And that's a powerful signal for someone that has the temptation of all the success that he's had. And so that's what makes him special, and it's also why he continues to improve. It starts with that mindset, and that triggers all of his work and triggers his vision as he continues to try to evolve.
I know that different type offensive players, Steph as opposed to Luka. What kind of, maturity does it take, or whatever, for Kaysen to guard those different type of guys? I know it's a team concept and everything else, but he was kind of the primary guy on both of those guys.
Yeah, I mean, and Morant, is kind of different from them. That's 3 straight games now that he's taken primary matchups, high volume, high usage players, very, to your point, different styles, and that's 3 and 4 nights, and he passed those tests just in terms of execution, and it just shows tremendous growth for him, in terms of his understanding of the league, his improvement on the fundamentals. He's always had the competitiveness, he's always had the defensive talent, but he's added some other stuff to it, and these were really 3 great tangibles for him that he can continue to build on.
Is it something about the second quarters too? Second night, the second quarter's been big for you.
Yeah, I just think our depth has been on display these last couple games, in terms of even the second quarter in Memphis was big for us, cutting into that lead when we went down early. We come in with that second unit lately, and they've done a great job to start the second, and then we come back in with a cycle of guys from the first quarter, and they can sustain it. So we want to be as close to a 48-minute team as we can. When you get a bunch of guys that are ready to go and they perform when their number's called, then that helps.
Lakers do a really good job of getting to the paint. 30 points there for them tonight. What stood out about the way you guys defended that area?
Yeah, I just thought our focus and intentionality and execution the last 2 games were really, really high level. These teams are good tests for us. They're teams that present a lot of different challenges. We also played a back-to-back, and it was our 6th and 7th game in 11 nights, which was a challenging stretch of the schedule as well. So I just commend the guys on the mental toughness and physical readiness to go out there and perform the way we did the last 2 games.
How much easier does it make your job to not really have to say much to this team? Second night of a back-to-back, and the way they came into this game with a lot of energy, didn't have any letdowns or anything. Like the Lakers were the rest of the team, but it looked like you guys were the team that had the day off.
Yeah, I mean, the guys just do a great job of getting themselves there every single night. And ready to play. It's part of being in the NBA is you got to drum it up 82 times, and it's not always easy. You don't always feel good, but these guys view those things as a challenge and are motivated by that, and they do so collectively. So I think that brings some energy to it in the locker room.
Ever since your tenure here, he's always talked about improvement. You always talked about development. I mean, on back-to-back nights like this, when you guys are just rolling downhill, what do you take away from these 2 games that you can deal with the development and the improvement? Yeah,
I mean, we've improved since the beginning of the season, which is the goal. We're a better team today than we were 12 games ago, 13 games ago, whatever it is. the thing we have to have the maturity to understand is there's 70 more games, and the rest of the league is going to continue to evolve and improve, and we have to do that to pace with the rest of the league. And so the guys have done a great job of carrying that mindset for a long time, but we have to carry that mindset despite the fact that we've had early success.
You've mentioned it a couple times tonight and last night about Shea not seeing himself like a finished product. It seems like he's taken a pretty obvious leap as a playmaker and as a passer. What have you seen from him on that end?
Yeah, I mean, he's I think he's been great defensively, first of all. I think he's been great in that category, just in terms of his manipulation of the game, the earliness and on-target nature of his passes. And the game's just slowed down for him over time. It's really remarkable if you go back and watch him as a young player in his first or second or third year. He's really transformed himself into this player in a lot of different ways. He's almost unrecognizable, which is a credit to the way he's like chiseled himself into this type of player. And so it sets a great tone. He deserves a lot of credit for that, and he's not resting on it either. That's what's exciting.
Obviously, Isaiah Joe is shooting the ball really well to start this season, but he's talked about how even when the shots aren't falling, the key for him is to do those other things to keep him on the floor. Just how much have you seen him do some of those things, whether it's making the right pass or being active on defense, that sort of stuff?
Yeah, I mean, Wiggins is like this too. Those guys are just like system monsters, and they just help everything work better because they're on the court, and it's on both ends of the floor. It's unbelievable reliability, unbelievable high-level execution of the game plan, of system fundamentals, and then offensively, they're great system players. They're great spacers, great cutters, great movers, great screeners. They're anything that we would teach any player about our system. They're like a walking example of how we want to play, and so it makes it very easy to ride with them through the inevitable ups and downs of shooting variance. But he's off to a great start, obviously.
Yeah, Coach, you talked, or you kind of always talked about consistency. Obviously, you guys were dominant last year, won the championship, but I feel like this year, in situations where last year you may have had slight like mental lapses or slip-ups, this team seems incredibly locked in. Can you just kind of talk about that?
Yeah, I mean, it's an 82-game season. It's early. We've got, more than 80% of the season left. That's a lot of time. And you go through different, cycles of the season. There's times where the wind's in your face for different reasons. There's times where the wind's in your back for different reasons. We're obviously in a nice team rhythm right now, but that's not permanent, and so, we also have to brace ourselves and be mentally tough enough for when the wind's in our face at different times, be humble enough to understand that that's around the corner, and those challenges are how you improve and how you grow. And, we've done a good job of weathering that early in the season with injuries and some closer games and stuff like that, but the 82-game schedule's a bear, and we got to continue to grow and improve so that we're ready to take on those challenges as they come.
Anyone else for Coach? Myers got one more.
Yeah. Guys playing a lot of energy. That play off, Caruso ran down Reeves, steals the ball, then gets a three on the other end. You guys are playing with a lot of energy.
Yeah.
This early in the year.
I mean, that's been the mark of this team for a long time. These guys, they love to compete, and they compete together, which I think has a contagiousness to it. I love when they make subtle plays and they're looking at each other on the bench. It like reinforces the energy, it reinforces the effort, it reinforces the toughness, and it's not just when they make a shot. It's when they make a winning play. And that provides energy to the team, and that's one of the special things about this group. But thing we have to understand is we got to have the humility to understand it's a 82-game season and it's really early. And if we want to continue to improve, then we have to continue to walk that walk.